Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I can't wait to share the journey with you. So let's start. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of My Forever Home, episode 2 of the sustainable season. Today, I'm really excited to have Sally Flower join me as a guest from Home Sanctuary. And we're going to talk today about sustainable and mindful decluttering. So I feel that it's almost going to put decluttering on its head in terms of what we would naturally think decluttering is all about. So Sally is actually a KonMari qualified declutterer, and I'm really excited that she's joining me today. But wait, this episode is not going to be about the KonMari method and sparking joy. We're actually going to go much deeper than that and really talk about decluttering in a sustainable way. I actually met Sally at a KonMari workshop, a little bit ironic, I suppose, at an interiors trade show called Decor and Design. And it was really encouraging for me to hear her talk about how she was decluttering in a meaningful way, which I suppose is what I really was excited about when I was listening to her talk then. And I always felt that the KonMari method was about elimination, about minimalism and getting rid of everything. And that for me just didn't resonate with me, and it just felt stark, and it is not what I talk about, and it's not what I'm about. So listening to Sally in the workshop was music to my ears. I don't need to have a minimalist home. I don't need to get rid of everything to have a home that feels decluttered. So she approaches decluttering in a different way, using what she'd learned from Marie Kondo, but adding a sustainable flavour, and that's what spoke to me. So I'm really excited to have Sally here today to kick off the sustainability season. When you're about to renovate or build a new home, it's inevitable that you're going to need and get rid of some things in your home, and that what you're going to take to your new home, and maybe things that you might want to think about being repurposed, or things that need to be discarded. If that's you, you're going to absolutely love this episode. I'm just going to do a quick intro on Sally, and then I'm going to welcome her directly onto the show. So Sally Flower is the first Australian trained by Marie Kondo in the famous KonMari method. She also holds a Master of the Environment from Melbourne University and is a wellness consultant, mindfulness coach, and a sustainability advocate. Her biggest motivation is climate change. She's passionate about changing the way we purchase, minimizing her environmental footprint, and helping others to do the same. Before starting her business, Sally spent 8 years in corporate finance, including a period working on Wall Street. And it was here in New York City she met Marie Kondo and established a deep passion for mindful living. Home Sanctuary is built on the solid foundation of her love for the environment and passion for reducing consumerism. Though through one-on-one consults, workshops, and events, Sally helps Australians to lead meaningful lives in nurturing homes with less. And Sally's goal is to change the way we purchase, to motivate and help our community to make purposeful choices that inspire us to live as the best version of ourselves. How awesome. Welcome, Sally, to the show.
Thank you so much. What an introduction. I'm so excited to be here to kick off your sustainability series. This is like music to my ears, my jam, my people. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's awesome to have you here. Like I was saying, it was just so fabulous for me to listen to someone else that was passionate about sustainability and how we can actually embrace it in, particularly with decluttering in a different way. So I was just so excited that you said yes to join as a guest. And I think it's going to be what really makes me excited about this particular episode is that when I talk to a lot of my clients, they feel that decluttering, that they had the same idea as what I had until I met you, which was get rid of everything, minimalist, we're going to have nothing else, our house is going to be stark and basically have no soul. And it's the polar opposite about how I talk to my clients. So hearing from you was just like, wow, that there are people out there that believe in the same thing. So it's awesome to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
So I suppose let's start with the KonMari method. I'm sure that most listeners will know about the KonMari method. It's got masses of press. There was the big show on Netflix. But for those who don't, and to do a quick sum up, what does the KonMari method mean when we're talking about decluttering?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's been a little bit of KonMari overload in the last probably 4 years, and
Mhm.
people are a little bit like, oh, we're sick of hearing about this Japanese decluttering part. But I still love the basic principles of Marie's method, and which made her so famous, is that you keep things in your home and you surround yourself with items and objects that make you feel good, that reflect who you are, that spark joy, that make you feel good when you wear them, when you display them. When you have a home that's surrounded by things that make you feel good, it's almost a gallery of your favorite pieces. And that part of the KonMari method really still resonates with me, and something that I still promote strongly within Home Sanctuary. So the key principle of sparking joy is a Marie Kondo thing. I think they've even trademarked it. And then there is the principle of folding. So for those of your listeners who have done a bit of YouTubing with the organizing a closet, there's plenty of YouTubers out there showing you how to fold undies and t-shirts and socks in the KonMari way. And what made her unique with that is that she's very Japanese bento boxy kind of way of organizing a wardrobe. Is that everything stands up, it's color coded, and you can see what you have and use what you have. And then the other principles, the few other kind of quirky things that makes Marie unique around, you say goodbye and thank you to items as you let go of them. And I like this in the fact that it makes you kind of think of objects around you as parts of, not really part of who you are, because that's kind of like adding on to the hoarding tendencies that some of my clients are trying to eradicate in their thought process, but makes you realize that everything you have, you need to be grateful of it. And that feeds into the Home Sanctuary method of thinking, in that everything in your home is a little bit of natural resource. Like everything around us came from the planet, and everything around us will eventually be waste or need to be upcycled or recycled. So this conscious notion of things around you that they have, like a soul or a feeling or a reason that they're in your life. So that kind of quirkiness is the extreme KonMari part, and a lot of people don't get involved in that. But the spark joy, the folding, and the thanking and goodbye is definitely a Marie element. There are definitely parts of the KonMari method that we don't do so much in Home Sanctuary anymore, and those are things like, if you're not going to use it straight away, throw it out. You can rebuy it again later. That kind of stuff. That's definitely not part of my method of decluttering. But those basic principles that I just mentioned are definitely the crux of Marie's method.
And I suppose that sparking joy, I mean, yeah, you just said that she's trademarked it. I think it's almost been overused. It's some people are like, oh, I don't want to hear that term ever again.
I
But I
know.
think when I heard you talk about it as well, when we met at the trade show, it was this whole philosophy around, I suppose, just a different way of saying it. You've got to love it. It's
Yes.
got to, and I suppose I just use that terminology instead of sparking joy, because it can conjure up so many different emotions. But it is surrounding yourself with things that you love. And I think that is the most important part around going through that decluttering process. How's it going to serve you? And that you need to love it, or is it part of your story?
Yeah, I love that part of your story and part of where
Yeah.
you are right now as well, because there are many people who are kind of classified as bowerbirds like myself who love things. Like I love beautiful things and I see beauty in everything, and I'm sure everyone listening in the interior design community loves beautiful things, because kind of like we've made careers and lives of it. But it's definitely that you can overdo the beautiful things and you can overdo how much you have. So there is a bit of a rationale there around, okay, it sparks joy, but is it actually going to spark joy for me for a long time in the space and the home and the need and purpose of my life right now? So there's definitely a little bit of a nuance there. You need to be careful, because you can definitely love a lot of stuff even though you don't use it or need it and still be in a cluttered home.
Yeah.
So it does definitely work for the first layer of decluttering, but once you need to go a little bit deeper and kind of questioning how your space is working for you and kind of really getting it in an order that's holistic and managing for your values, then sometimes just the sparking joy doesn't work so much. And that's definitely when clients come to me, then they're like, look, I've done the wardrobe, but I can't do anything else. That's a little bit harder. And that's when you
Yeah.
need to move from like, what does spark joy actually mean for you? Not just the happy feel, but like, is it part of your story? Is it adding to your values? Is it aligning with your goals and where you want to be right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly right. Now, look, I know that I sometimes, I'm a bit of a bowerbird as well, and I do collect things from, my grandmother and things from my mum, and it's like, well, they mean something to me as well, but it's like, well, there's got to be a balance too. So,
Yes, yeah. There
so
has to
you
be a
mentioned
balance.
Yes, you mentioned, when I met you, the cost, the real human cost to being surrounded by mess. And I really wanted you to share that today in terms of what is the cost of having mess in our lives. So there's one thing to say, well, I want to be able to live in an environment that is not stressful and that is clean and tidy. But just share though that information around the human cost of being surrounded by mess, because I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, this is something that I probably only really tapped into about 2 years, maybe. And then I got really deep reading lots of articles and psychological papers around it. And now it just makes sense to me all the time. So we know there's studies done by human, like psychology scientists and human-based psychology scientists in the States, who found that being people living in messy environments and being surrounded by stuff like clutter around them actually increases the stress hormone in your system, which then you have the heightened level of stress, which then can lead on to things like, depression and not being able to function at your highest ability, and a little bit of insomnia and not being able to sleep very well, and really just a lower state of happiness. And
Mm.
I mean, it's all good and well to kind of, read that as a line in a paper. But when I actually put that into perspective for me, when I walk into a really cluttered home, or my home is chaotic because I had a busy week, like we all do, I don't feel great in there. I feel
Mm.
like I need to get stuff out of my way. Like I feel a little bit more heightened, more aware of what's going on. And sometimes I just kind of want to walk out and close the door. And that's like you hear a lot of people like, oh, I just want to go on holiday, I want to get out of here. Like, is that because your home isn't serving you? Have you got too much stuff in there? And so now we actually know that this cost of excess around us does increase this cortisol level. So we have a scientific correlation between stress, flight and flight response with excess stuff around us. So there's that element. And then there's another whole study around sleep. And people who sleep in messy or decluttered rooms have trouble both falling asleep, and they have trouble waking up in the middle of the night. And this, you think about if you go to a holiday for a weekend to a hotel, you tend to sleep really well because there's not a lot of
Mm.
visual distraction around you. So the brain doesn't turn off overnight when you're in a messy space. So you
It
still
just
kind of,
all makes complete sense.
yeah, right?
Like if you're lying in bed and you're surrounded by all this stuff,
Yeah,
it's just too busy. It's like, don't watch a screen when you want to go to sleep. And if
exactly.
I
It's like,
think about it makes sense. I mean, as you said, you can read a statistic, but if you actually really think about it, it does make sense. I'm a bit of a bit guilty of having a fairly messy walk-in pantry. It's a
mm,
space that I dump everything so that my kitchen is on display,
mm,
and it stresses me out. I go in there and it's like I can't find anything.
yeah.
It really stresses me out. And I know when I do a declutter, and it's on the cards very soon, it makes me feel so much better.
Yeah,
So it makes complete sense.
your brain actually functions better. There's another
Yeah.
study around cognitive functioning, is that visual chaos slows your
Mm,
cognitive resources, and your brain goes into overload and can't process information. So that would
yeah.
make perfect sense. Like your kitchen feels nice and all, like you get clarity in there, it's clean, clear bench tops, blah, blah, blah. But you walk into the pantry, but then your brain goes into overload because it's
Yeah.
the stuff around you. And you think about this with kids, you give them too much stuff to watch on television, or you come out of a really busy day at work and people are talking to you, your brain's
Mm.
overloading. So if you have that kind of visual distraction at home as well, your brain's in constant overdrive.
Yeah, and I actually, if I think about my kids, and I try not to get involved in their messy clutter in their room, we've been through that process so many times, and I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to this. It's like, do I force them to clean their room or not? But they actually come to me and they say, oh, it's too much, mum. Like I can't. And they don't even know where to start. So you help them and everything, and you tidy it up, and then within the next 2 days, it's a tip again. But they
Yeah,
get overwhelmed, and they
yeah, they
actually
do.
say it. It's too it's too much for their in me mum. So I can imagine then that they're not sleeping and all that sort of stuff. So we need to do it for our well-being if it's not just to have a visually nice looking place. There's so
Yeah,
many arguments for it.
so many arguments for it. I mean, this, especially with offices, like if you have like lots of reminders around you, they can actually become like well-intended reminders, come this kind of chaotic visual stuff in front of you. And there's a minimalist called Josh Bleeker who talks about the convenience fallacy. So you want to have everything in front of you so it's there and convenient and you know it's there, you can access it. But it actually ends up being a visual distraction. And then the reason why you don't know where everything is because everything's in front of you and your brain isn't functioning well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So at
that's a
what
big
point?
part of the health of decluttering.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's why I really wanted you to share it, because I think it's a part that maybe not everyone's aware of, that it's really impacting your health and your mental well-being. So at what point do you feel there could be a connection with decluttering in general and sustainability? What sort of things can people, listeners think about when they're going to start decluttering and doing that in a sustainable way?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's like as a climate change consultant and expert in environmental sustainability, it's kind of a two-ended sword, that kind of question. Same question about like, how can I recycle soft plastics correctly? Everything in your home you've already purchased. Everything in your home you own. Everything in you have that you own, you are now responsible for, and you need to then let go in the most sustainable way possible. And there's really great resources to do that, and that's definitely what I help my clients about, and I can talk through what they are. But if you think about actually creating a sustainable home, it's about changing the way you consume and consuming less. So when we think about having a sustainable decluttering, we are still talking about the end life cycle of products in your home. To truly really have a sustainable lens of the way that you see your home, it needs to be, once you've done all the decluttering, you let things go in the most sustainable way. And then from then on, you're only consuming items that you really need. You're consuming them in a way that you're choosing the products that have minimal impact on the environment and detrimental damages to society, and that you are making sure that you actually truly need them, because we all know that having less is always the best way to go. So,
and I'll just remind listeners that we've got you for the next episode as well to talk about conscious purchasing, which I think is a really, really, it's the next step effectively. It's actually the first step, but I suppose it is also the next step as well. It's almost like full circle.
Yes, you almost need to do the process of realizing how much stuff you have and reconsidering the what you have, the decisions that you've made up to date, and not like kicking yourself. This isn't a process of like getting really angry at the amount of stuff that you have. I actually find a lot of my older clients have a lot of trouble letting go because they don't want to make the waste. They're like, I don't want to get rid of it because it will just go into landfill, and I really would love a younger person to reuse my crystal vase. But the reality is that that's probably not going to happen, and we can't go back in time and change things, and it was a different world probably when you purchased it. So let's just move forward in a conscious way. So the conscious consumerism is definitely like the second step, but also ongoing becomes the first step. But the things that are sustainable decluttering, making sure that you're only letting go of items that you really conscious that you want to let go of, and you're not just throwing it out because you feel like you need a fresh start, or you feel like you need to just make some more space, or you on a whim you're like, I just want to get rid of 5 bags to the op shop. It really needs to be that you are consciously aligning your home with your values and what you need to be achieving in your life and for your family and for your home. This joy of throwing away is the reason I essentially stopped promoting the KonMari principles, because there became this massive tidal wave of people on social media, in community Facebook groups, snapping pictures of what they'd thrown to the op shop and celebrating it. And you can't be celebrating throwing away. You have to be celebrating space, clarity in what you're working towards. Because as soon as you start rewarding the wrong thing, you're just like, it's rewarding a bad behavior. It's like,
Yeah.
a kid does something wrong, or, you're rewarding yourself for eating a packet of chips on the couch rather than, going for a walk with your friend or whatever. So that's the first thing to remember when you're letting go, not celebrating the excess and throwing away. And then secondly, it's all about separating the items and knowing where they can be recycled in the best way. So now, like in the last 2 years, we've had a real shift in what we can recycle in Australia. So textile recycling is becoming really available. And what textile recycling does is they put all the clothes and all of the excess linen and all the towels in a big mincer, and they felt it into they cut it into small little bits, and then they either melt it back together again, and it makes dog beds or couches or whatever, or underlay for carpets. So textile recycling is really available. I've got an article on my website which kind of compares the recycling options you have. You can choose things like H&M, and you can choose things like Sheridan, or you can choose TerraCycle and Upcycle, and there are definitely benefits to the latter two. So there's I can go through that as well if you want it sometime. And then it's almost understanding, which is easier said than done, may I say, understanding what can go in your curbside recycling bin, so the bin that you have at your home, and what you need to take to a transfer station. And this is what I do with my clients, because when you're in the decluttering process, you really just want to get it out, right? You want to just throw it out, you're exhausted, but taking that, either planning beforehand, so you have your recycling box ready, that you know that you'll take that to the recycling centre when you've got a mental capacity, rather than just throwing it in the bin, and allowing yourself to kind of have that time to do it, because you do need that little bit of extra time to recycle your stuff that you're getting rid of. It's much, much easier just to throw it in the green bin, or what do we classify?
And I
the
think
rubbish bin.
that's the danger. And I think that
Yeah.
you're talking about that before. I just when you're talking about being in the right frame of mind is really important. About, you don't just want to do a big clear act. You may have had a big life change, and for example, sometimes when people separate from a partner, it's like, I just need to eradicate all these things in my life that remind me of that. But if you're not in the right space, you may end up getting rid. I know you mentioned this when I met you as well, that you go through declutter, and I've done this too, and you end up getting rid of stuff that you really didn't want to get rid of, and you've regretted getting rid of it. And I've actually done that a lot, because it's like, just let it go, because I've got this goal that the garage has got to be clear, or this space has got to be clear. And there's been things that I've really regretted letting go of, because I wasn't in the right frame of mind when I was going through that process.
Yeah, and that's the glorifying throwing away. You're rewarding yourself for throwing something away. And I've done it too. It's you let stuff go that you didn't intend to, because you're just in this, what I call the danger zone. And you're like,
it is a danger zone, and it is. But I think it goes back to being in the right frame of mind. Make sure you are mentally in the right space to do it, and that you don't have these silly goals. And I think the other thing that is important that you've just said is making the time to do it in a mindful way, getting rid of the things that they are recycled, that in advance where things are going to go. And I've seen where, people fill their car and, it goes off to the tip. But then that's a cost. It's a massive cost.
Huge cost. Yeah.
Your website is a fantastic resource, and it will be in the show notes. You've got some amazing resources on where, not just for textiles, but all sorts of different things that can be recycled, things that I wasn't even aware of that could be recycled. And textile waste is such a huge, huge problem worldwide. And the amount of, I call it fast fashion that we consume, but it just ends up, most of it, people think it will go to the op shop and it's got stains all over it, and it just ends up in waste. And that's not going to be recycled. That will end up in the bin. So if it's not good enough to go to the op shop, if you're not going to actually wear that yourself, don't send it to the op shop just because it makes it easy for you. It has to be done in a mindful way, I think, if you're going to do it properly in that full loop.
It really does. And just giving things to the op shop, And you only have to go into the back of an op shop, which I've done a few times, and realize how much stuff they have. And we spend $3 to $4 million every year in Australian charitable organisations throwing stuff in landfill. So that's unlikely that's the stuff that you do give to the op shop, unless it's, high quality, good condition. It's not going to be purchased anyway. So the textile waste is like a really easy thing to do. And nowadays, like we used to, there's some really cool shoe recycling. A lot of the stores now, you can take your shoes and they pull apart the rubber. Whereas now a lot of the textile recycling boxes you can buy, that you can actually put your shoes in there too. So shoes and clothes, there's really no excuse to be throwing stuff in the bin. Just one thing, a caveat to remember for that is that it does have to be clean. So if you have an old towel, you do have to wash it before you put it in the textile recycling, because obviously you can't be sending them dirty laundry. you have to
would just be
clean.
the decent thing to do. But it's like the recycling that goes in, for bottles and plastics and things that can be recycled. They need to be washed.
Yes, they do.
You know, so many people just put it in that bin and think, well, my job's done. But actually, it's not really the job done, because now that's going to go to landfill, because it cannot be recycled because it hasn't been cleaned. So I think that there's, you need to go, you need to fulfill it correctly, rather than just, well, I've put it in the right bin. And I don't think there's enough education around that part either, but we can get onto a whole other topic here. So have to be careful.
This responsible citizenship hasn't really trickled so much into recycling correctly, because, and I don't want to talk about how, because recycling is still it's not the best thing to do, obviously, like not having, stuff to put in the recycle bin is the best thing to do, like having things that are unwrapped, or that they don't come with packaging. But the reality is that our lives, the world that we live in, hasn't got that for us. Like we can't all go to the butcher and, take a cow in and have them, give meat back to us unpackaged. So we are what we call in climate change transition, there are locked in consumable behaviors that we have to act upon, that upstream needs to be changed in order for us to change our behavior. But yeah, being a responsible citizen when it comes to using the right bin and washing things is important. And then knowing the resources that you have available. So things like electronics and batteries, you don't want to be putting them in the recycle. Things like big old pots, aluminium pots and trays that you've got from your kitchen, and ladles and so forth, they will need to go to your local transfer station, because that's a metal, not like an aluminium can. It's a different alloy, and that is that there are services there to be able to convert that, but you either have to go to the transfer station and drop that off, or you'll need to send it away to TerraCycle or a recycle community program like that. And you can now, with TerraCycle, buy a box. It comes to your house, you put it all in and you send it back. But there is a cost for that. So it just depends on whether you have more time or money.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the point there is that, well, I think go to your website, because then I'll put it in because you have got all of the different types of recycling available.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that someone's thinking, well, I don't know how I'd recycle this, your website is a fantastic resource for all of that.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And I'm just actually thinking as well, selling stuff is also great. And it doesn't even have to be for money. You can just take photos of some items that say free. And then someone who wants even if it's an old toaster or an extra chair, you might, it might take you time to get it to the op shop, but someone might be willing to come and pick that up. So use those free Facebook Market apps and community Facebook groups as well. They're also great.
They're fantastic. I think Facebook Marketplace is just such an amazing resource, not only to sell, but for free things as well.
Totally.
And also your local Facebook groups. I know the one that I'm a member of in my local community, people are constantly advertising the stuff they've got as hard rubbish. Please come and collect it if it's really good stuff. But also, it is just, I've got this sofa, I can't sell it. Can someone come and collect it? So they are really good resources. And there's often posts that I see that someone's You know, they've got people coming out, they can't afford to furnish their house, and you know, you can give away your items to that. So that's been a lot. I've seen a lot of that for people coming out from Afghanistan, for example, donating
Perfect.
furniture, and
Yep.
it's a great. There's just sometimes it's about thinking a bit more beyond, let me just put it in the bin.
Yep.
It's, you know, thinking about the next step to make sure that it's not going to hit landfill, and that's
Yep.
the really mindful component, I think, of that decluttering component. So it's making sure you're surrounding yourself with stuff that you love, but then it's also thinking about its end game. Where's it going to end up? And it shouldn't be in landfill.
Yeah, booking in a hard rubbish collection should be the last resort. It's
Correct.
contacting your community, calling up Salvation Army, seeing if you can booking in a pickup. And these things need to be done in advance, right? So you can't just expect it all to happen tomorrow. Like, think about it and think, okay, I'm doing it. I'm selling this couch. We're moving home. Okay, let's book in Salvation Army, or let's post it on the Facebook group because it might take 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, this was something that also really, and I think that it resonates with a lot of people, because you mentioned in your workshop about different life stages and how what we need changes as we move into different life stages. And when you were talking about this, I thought, yes, I could still love this particular piece. I love it. But right now I've got little kids. Let's, yeah, if I think about my own example, I've got some really magnificent vases that are from my grandmother, and they mean a lot to me because she's no longer with me. And so I don't want to get rid of them because they mean something to me. I love them. But when I had small kids, it was like, well, yeah, you know, if we go back to what you were originally saying, are they serving me? Do I love them? Are they going to fit into my house right now? They weren't. So talk to me about how you declutter for the different life stages, that, you know, you still love it, but where, you know, there are lots of different life stages we go through. So just talk to me about, let's talk to our listeners about that.
Yeah, this is a tip that I took on from Joanna Gaines, the American interior designer, but I can put a decluttering lens on it. So she talks about this, building a home or designing a home for the stage that you're in. And I was like, that works exactly the same for decluttering, is that you can't be holding on to things because the person that you used to be needed it or loved it. And it's a lot of like really being aware of who you are and aware of where you're going and aware of what you want. And it becomes quite clear that my job as a home sanctuary consultant is a lot more of as much a life coach as it is just letting go of things. It's really having a deep conversation with yourself around, if I'm going to move forward in my life, I need to make space for X, Y, and Z. And to do that, I probably have to let go of what I no longer need. So they can be really simple examples of this, like when you are studying or when you are just coming out of a period of study and you're moving into a career, you tend to have a lot of notebooks and a lot of study resources and a lot of books and materials that kind of you associate with you in that period of learning, that almost been tools that you have lent on as you were learning your trade, and that you would go back to produce papers or take on a new client or whatever it was. But then as you become more as you become more skilled and that ability of whatever your trade is becomes ingrained in who you are, you no longer really need the resources. The knowledge is in your brain as much as and in your body from this experience you've had of doing the trade. So therefore, how are the books still serving me if I'm just keeping them in a big cupboard, said, oh yeah, I learned that at university or I learned that at wherever, I just got to keep it? Not really, because now you've learnt all that, and having a book there with information that was really helpful for you to learn the skill 5 to 10 years ago doesn't mean it's still going to serve you now. So that's a really simple example of like,
it's a good one. It's a good one. And I'm sitting here nodding and sitting here really resonating with this, because I finished my degree 30 years ago and I have still got my university books. They need to go this weekend. And the funniest thing is, because they are taking up space in my bookcase and I'm a book lover, that I could be having other books in there that really mean something to me. But I kept them thinking at the time, 30 years ago, that I would go back to those books throughout my career, and I would, and this is when I was in marketing, and I would go back to those and there'd be things that I'd want to check up on and things that I might forget. Do you know how many times I've opened those books in 30 years? Never.
Never.
I've never opened them, and I can see them from where I'm talking to you, all these textbooks, and they'd be so outdated now anyway.
Yeah.
But I've kept, it's like this stage of my life that is, it's no longer relevant.
It's really common one. I think the reason I said that is
It's such a good
it's the
example.
most common because we also spend a lot of money on our education and training, and it becomes an identity piece of who we are. So then letting go of them, we feel full of like, oh my gosh, am I letting go of that part of me? Or what if I forget that information? So it's really understanding that that's no longer serving me in this space that I am right now, and being able to clear them off my bookshelf means that I would, have the space that I've been craving, or I could make space for this new hobby that I'm bringing into my life.
Absolutely. So I'm really dying inside right now, admitting all of that. But it's just, they're just sitting there, and I've just never, and I've moved them all around the world with me.
Yeah, and
how ridiculous. How
and
much money has that cost me to do that? God, I'm
yeah, it's
almost
funny,
having
isn't
my
it?
own personalized session with you as we're talking, Sally.
That's
But it's
great.
a
It's
really,
good.
really good example. And I'm sure there are so many listeners that have gone through, maybe not as bad as me after 30 years, but
No,
it's
that's pretty
definitely
normal.
hitting a nerve.
Yeah, I was actually, it probably was come to mind because my husband and I just bought a house and we're moving in a few weeks, and I've done my declutter list and I started with books, and he did half of a degree, but he still kept the books because it was of his first degree he got into, even though he didn't finish that. He's got 3 other degrees now, but he wanted to hold on to them because it was like his first one, and
It's
it's taken him.
nostalgic.
Yeah, it's nostalgic,
It's
totally.
nostalgic.
Yeah, and so
And
it's
that, I think
okay to
that's exactly what it is for me. It's a stage of my life. It was an important part of my life. It's nostalgia, but it's not serving us anymore.
Mm.
I do not need those books. They are so going this weekend. So,
So if
and
then that's something to think about. I mean, if they do, it's okay to keep a few if they are nostalgic, because then
yeah,
they're servicing a different purpose. Then they're
yeah,
purely there for sentimental, nostalgic reasons. They're not there because it's a reference text. So if the
correct.
product changes it changes its purpose in your home, and that purpose serves, and that's great. But if it's there because you want to, reference it, that's not going to happen.
But I don't need 15 of them. One would be
No.
enough for nostalgic reasons.
Or
So,
take a photo of it. That's your nostalgia. That's good
yeah,
stuff.
and I probably don't even need a photo of it. But talking about the life stages as well, which also goes back to this whole, things that you love, that we can, and I know I spoke to you about this in the workshop, but what about if I really love something and I actually don't want to throw it away and I don't want it to go because it's just not serving me right now? And if I think about, when you've got kids, things really change when you've got kids. You need to put things away that may be breakable, or when you get older, you need different things. So do we have to get rid of it, or can we just put it away and it comes out again another time?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question and good example, because with children, not only do they are breakable, but you also need to make space for them. And I
Yeah,
actually have had a few clients who still have things in their kids' wardrobes, and like, it's my house, so I can use their wardrobe. But it doesn't really work like that. Like, you really need to make space for your children. So, and space for their life cycles and where they are as well. That changes quite rapidly. So yes, definitely this is a little bit the same as seasonal wardrobes, in that you can box things up and put them away for the season because you don't need to have them in front of you all the time. So the same thing can go for objects. There are a few different ways that you can do it. I think for me, I have tubs that kind of look quite, they're all similar, they're all the same style, and they stack really nicely. So they're very organized in my in a space which I will go back to later, like like a spare cupboard or a shed or whatever. And the second thing is you'd need to go back to them quite periodically and make sure that you still want that item. So I would highly recommend labeling it. So if you have decided that you're going to put away your most expensive crystals or whatever it is, or you're putting away your high heels, but you don't want to sell them yet because you'd love to think that when your kids are, a little bit older, you'll be able to go back and have a bigger social life, then you'd pop them into, the dream. You'd pop them into a box and you'd give them a label of what they are, and you'd actually be quite detailed in that. So shoes, and then, my Sex and City Tony Biancos or whatever, Miano Bonics, or whatever they are, like you would actually really label them so that you know that you can quickly access them if they ever do get invited to a cocktail party, and you can quickly whip it out. So not only, you don't want to just be getting it out of your line of sight and in a safe space. It needs to be still knowing where to go back to it. So it's still an item that you own and you're still responsible for it, and you want to be able to know where it is and access it if needed. So it can't just go into a dark attic and worry about it in 30 years' time. It's essentially what I'm getting at here. But it's totally fine to store things, but it can't just be away and I'll think about it later. It still need to be organized. There's still objects that you own and you're responsible for.
And I think this also leads to things that I talk to my clients about, that, they might be looking at things around them in their living room, for example, and it's like, well, I don't really like that anymore, so I'll get rid of it. And I often say to my clients, why don't you put it away for a while? And it's probably that just you're a little bit sick of it at the moment and you need a refresh. And we need a refresh with our wardrobes. We need a refresh in our home. So sometimes I say, move your furniture around. It'll feel completely different. Or, and my mother taught me this actually, that she would put her decorator items away and she'd pull out some different ones. And so she'd create a different look. So she wasn't getting rid of things or necessarily even buying new things. You might just buy one piece that adds to the collection that you already have. And I do this with artwork as well with clients. It's like move it into a different room or put it on a different wall because it creates a different feeling in a space. So we don't necessarily even need to get rid of it. It's just creating a different look or bringing out different things that we bring out periodically. I know that I talk to clients about having maybe a summer feel and a winter feel in our home. We move our furniture around. I bring out different colors so that you are refreshing the space without necessarily getting rid of stuff.
I love that. That's great. And also means that you purchase quality and you purchase items you love that will be reused.
Absolutely. So just having things on rotation. And you might then not need to buy as much, or you might not need to buy anything. And so I do practice this, and I really encourage my clients to practice it. And I just have one cupboard that I just pull out bits and pieces and, create a completely different feeling. So I would encourage people to do that too.
Yeah, I really like that. And changing cushion covers and changing the rugs and not throwing them away, just storing them, but storing them where you've got them. It's vital. Yeah. And then you become excited. Then I guess when you open the container and you pull them out in the next season, if they're not really resonating with you, then maybe you can question if you should let go of it.
That's right. But I suppose it was the reason I mentioned it is because it's not necessarily that you even yet you can put it away, but it might just be putting it in a different space.
Yes.
Changing the room. Often people have two living rooms. Maybe it's that you move it from one of the spaces into a different space and it looks and feels completely different. So there's lots of different ways that we can treat the things that we own. But I love the fact that you've then said, well, yeah, if after 6 months it's still not sparking joy, as we would say, then yeah, it's probably time for it to move on.
Yes, but I think you need to give it that chance if it's something that you've recognized that you no longer want it in your space because of the seasonality or because you don't want to get rid of it, you want to try it somewhere else. Give that a go for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned, I really wanted to talk to, you've got so many resources on your website, and I know you've referenced it about the upcycling of the textiles. And then there's other resources that you've got on the website, which I'll put into the notes as well. But just what are some other insights, or are there other insights that you can share with our listeners today to help them effectively declutter and discard? Are there any other top tips that you wanted to share? Because you've gone through quite a lot today already.
Yeah, I think just to wrap up, the most important thing is before you start is to sit down and think about why you're doing it.
Yeah, that's
Think,
great.
really kind of sit with your reflection and thoughts, and am I decluttering because I need to make more space for a new hobby? Am I need more space for my kids to play? Do I feel chaotic in my home and I can't concentrate when I'm studying, or whatever it is? I really kind of just doing a declutter for the sake of a declutter is not going to get you anywhere. And it will really continue with this glorifying of throwing away. So taking a moment to sit down and work out why you're doing it and create a mantra that works for you, and then starting. And I purposely have a first step session, a 90-minute session that I can do online or in home for this exact reason, because you need to work out where you're going before you start your decluttering journey. And some people can't get that first bit done, and that kind of holds them up. So that's why that service is there. So making sure you know where you're going, and then allocating time. Someone said to me to keynote the other day, I've got some hoarding tendencies. How long do you reckon it would take me? Is a long weekend in November enough? I said, no. No. I'm going to say 6 to 12, maybe 18 months. Like, you need to dedicate time to this. You can't wake up one morning and decide to do a marathon run. There's a lot of preparation that gets you there. And so the same thing goes for doing a whole home declutter. And that's why our complete home package is scheduled over 6 months plus, because everyone kind of works through at different stages. So even just blocking out your calendar for 45 minutes every weekend, or every month, a whole weekend you allocate to it, whatever it is, really dedicating the time. And then setting yourself up with those sustainable decluttering resources at the start, finding your local salvos, knowing where to drop things off, ordering a textile box, getting sorted with your transfer station, and knowing where to take the waste that can't go in the curbside. So those 3 things.
And that really is setting yourself up for success, but you need the planning. You need to have a goal, manage your expectations about what you can achieve, and then ultimately from a sustainability perspective is making sure that you've sorted out where it's all going to go, with the ultimate goal of it doesn't end up in landfill.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's ways to do it, but you need to be planned and organized, which is why I would imagine it's so beneficial having someone to help you along that journey.
Yeah, because firstly it gets done, and then secondly that you can use your mind power to make the decisions of what to let go, rather than having to worry about where it does go.
And I know that that's been really beneficial for me in the past, having someone to help me make that decision as well, that's impartial. So where can I also wanted to let listeners know about your awesome 10-day challenge, because I signed up for that and that was really beneficial to me. They're just tiny little things that can just help every day. I thought it was awesome getting that email every day. So share your website details, and where can people sign up for the 10-day challenge?
10-day challenge is you can sign up on our website. There's a link on our Instagram at homesanctuary.com.au or at homesanct, or you can look up Sally Flower and I'll come up on Instagram and Facebook. And the 10-day challenge is under our free resources tab, and in there you'll find other decluttering resources. There's a whole heap of videos. You can listen to some keynotes that are public and some workshops that are public too. Again, the 10-day challenge is 10 days of tips for you to start creating your decluttered and sustainable home. And we've been doing it for 4 years now, and it's a big crowd pleaser. Everyone loves it. It's a free resource.
It's an awesome one. And of course, if people need some help actually going through the motions, they can engage you to help with their home as well, can't they?
Yes, I am based in Melbourne, but I do support people and clients all over Australia. We have online and in-home consulting options too.
Fantastic.
And sign up to our newsletter as well, because our newsletter we send out every few weeks. tips and resources, and if we've got keynotes coming up that are open to the public, we always send the most updated through there. So you can sign up to our newsletter at homesanctuary.com.au as well.
Fantastic. And I'll put those links also in the show notes so people can get them easily too. It's been really, really fabulous having you on the show today, Sally. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and really giving people the heads up on how you don't need to throw everything away and how you can declutter in a really mindful, sustainable way. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Bye for now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you're ready to renovate or build a new home and you need help to create a beautiful and functional forever home, you can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. Have a great day.